date is June 11th, 2023. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Figure Four Podcast. My name is Doug. This episode, Donald and I are going to run down our top 10 wrestlers of our generation. Guys we grew up watching. There's going to be a few surprises in there. Some names are going to be left out. Maybe some names that don't belong in there. That's up for you guys to decide. Enjoy the show, folks. So I'm going to start. At number 10, I put Ricky Steamboat. One time he had NWA gold. He beat Ric Flair for the world title. Now, he did okay in WCW. He didn't really do anything in the WWF. He had one Intercontinental Championship for like a month, and then Honky Tonk Man took it. But he had 4 U.S. titles, 8 tag team titles in WCW, and 1 NWA tag team title. Steamboat I put in the top 10 just because of the matches he had. Well, the feud that he had with Savage and that match at WrestleMania 3, I always said that was almost the perfect match of all time. Until I saw all the fights with him and Ric Flair in the NWA for that World Heavyweight title. The Chi-Town brawls, the 1 hour time limit matches, 2 out of 3 falls, whatever it was. Steamboat had chemistry with just about anybody he wrestled with. That's why I went with him for my number 10.
It's funny that you picked Steamboat because he was originally my number 10. Like, I'm not even kidding. If you can make out my list, I've got him scratched out.
Yeah.
And my number 10, I actually went with Macho. I mean, looking at his run, WCW, I'm not even going to count those days because he was coming on the end of his career. WWF, I mean, he's Intercontinental Champion, King of the Ring, Heavyweight Champion how many times? Athleticism coming out of his ears. I mean, growing up, he was playing minor league ball, getting into all of these other sports. The guy just he was just a genuine athlete in the ring. Could work the mic. His promos were something out of this world. Probably a little bit of cocaine involved in there too. But
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I went with Macho as my number 10, but it's so weird too because the fact that you went with Steamboat and you would already mention the Steamboat match with him and Macho at WrestleMania 3, so I'm not even going to get into that because you already dressed that perfectly. But yeah, I went with Randy as my number 10.
There's going to be there's going to be names in here people are going to be surprised maybe where they're positioned in the top 10, like for our picks, and they're probably going to be surprised by names that like, fuck, you shouldn't be there at all, but okay, so now number 9. I've got the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby. The man with the big boot. Getting funky like a monkey. Now, growing up, I was never a huge Dusty Rhodes fan. I didn't get it. The common man, if you will. I just never got the persona, but as I got older, I wound up appreciating him. Now, he was a 3-time NWA champion. That's pretty good for the son of a plumber. But charisma, hands down, he just had it. Not the greatest athlete in the world, but for a big dude, he could move around that ring pretty good, and his stamina was pretty good. The War Games, the very first War Games with him and Arn Anderson in there starting it off, buddy. That was just, I actually watched War Games yesterday or Friday night, the very first one, and I forgot how damn good the first War Games was. So, didn't really appreciate him at the time when I was younger, but Dusty Rhodes, he's in at number 9 for me.
You brought up War Games. It was actually Dusty that pitched the idea for War Games. War Games was his baby.
It was created by him and Arn Anderson.
Yeah. Man, some of the minds back then, like to come up with the matches that they had, like for War Games, Starrcade, like holy Jesus.
Yep.
Number 9, he has had some time in the ring, more notably as a manager and a mouthpiece. I went with Bobby Heenan.
Yeah, I kind of toyed with Heenan. I didn't know where to put him, but yeah, keep going. I get that.
I mean, his in-ring abilities, obviously, like if he was going to have a match, air quotes match, you knew he was going to lose. Like there was, he wasn't going to do anything phenomenal. The handful of times that he actually had a match,
Oh,
But
no one could take
just
a shit kicking like Bobby Heenan.
oh, absolutely, man. Um, but yeah, like it's some of his comments over the years, like, you don't have to yell at me, Shivani. I'm not blind. You
That's the
know,
brain, by the way. That's the other part of the anatomy.
him and Gorilla, man, like just on the mic, like, just Heenan as a manager was amazing. Some of the best promos that I've ever seen in the business, and stayed a heel pretty much all of his career.
Always was.
Always was. Even when the NWO came in WCW, like he hated the NWO. I think it was more so just that his hate for Hogan just carried forward with
Which
that.
is funny because on screen he hated Hulk Hogan with a passion. And even in WCW, he said, I've been telling you people for years this man is no good. Now you see what, but in real life, it was actually Hogan that when he left Vern Gagne in the AWA, it was Hogan
Yep.
that brought Heenan over. Told McMahon, listen, you got to bring him over. We could do a lot of good things together. And it wasn't shortly after that he started the Heenan family and had it pretty much the whole time with his run in WWE.
Yeah. And man, he had quite a few, quite the stable. Like when you look at all the guys that he managed, he had the Brain Busters, he had Mr. Perfect, he had Ric Flair, like
Rick
all
Rude,
champions. Rick Rude,
Haku, Andre, like it was Bundy, Stud, Orndorff.
Yep.
He had a good arsenal.
Yep.
In his weaponry, that's for sure.
So it was the Brain for me in at number 9.
Okay. At number 8, I took Kurt Hennig. I took Mr. Perfect at number 8 because technically wise, they always say that Bret Hart is the best technical wrestler on the planet. Now, I'll agree with that. He was. Bret was a great technical wrestler because he had that snap to his moves and there was never any wasted movement. Hennig kind of had that too, technical wise. He just didn't have that snap of Bret Hart. He didn't move.
He was a very fluid wrestler.
Yes.
Very fluid wrestler.
He measured everything. He didn't rush anything at all.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I mean, the matches between Perfect and Bret Hart, they were like, they were pretty nice to watch. They were poetry in motion. He didn't do much in the WWF. He had a couple intercontinental titles. He was AWA heavyweight champion. I think in the AWA, he had the tag team titles with Scott Hall. But I mean, but I started watching him when we were kids in the AWA. I don't really remember him teaming up with Scott Hall and having those tag titles. When I started watching him, he had just basically won the AWA heavyweight title. So he was basically just coming into his own then. And then when he went to the WWF, it took maybe another year and a half to really sink in that Mr. Perfect character. And I think that's when he really became a journeyman wrestler in that ring, just a technician. So at number 8, I took Mr. Perfect.
At number 8, I'm just going to say Dubs, because that's exactly who I took at number 8. I don't know if you can see my list. I took Mr. Perfect at number 8. There's nothing else that I can really add. You touched on his matches with Bret, like they're the stuff of legends. Like you want to talk technical wrestling. He could also be a high flyer too, but I mean more so he was a mat wrestler. I found he had some good submissions. Of course, the perfect plex, you can't go wrong with that. I don't know if I can add anything else other than what you just said, man. But yeah, I had Mr. Perfect at number 8. That's one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's one of 6 that I didn't have to change.
Okay. At number 7, I've got The Rock.
Okay.
8-time WWE champion, and he had the World Heavyweight Championship twice. Rock was never and will never be a great wrestler. Rock was more flash and go in the ring. Let's face it, that people's elbow is basically him just falling on his back and dropping his forearm across your chest. But people get into it because of the presentation. Rock was excellent he was an amazing entertainer. Not a great wrestler. Fabulous on the mic. he was an okay worker. Wasn't the greatest worker in the world, but he was a good hand in the ring. But as far as entertaining wise, he's probably, well, he's up there. He's, like I say, he's on my list at number 7 out of the top 10. But yeah, 8 WWE titles, 2 World Heavyweight titles. He's on his way to the Hall of Fame. He's first ballot Hall of Famer at any time. Went on, made his movies, comes back every now and then. I still say he's going to come back and he's going to be the one to end Roman Reigns' shit run as world champion. But yeah, at number 7, I got The Rock.
Well, that's a good spot for him. I mean, he was a good showman. Like you said, he was a good worker. I don't know if you watched that show Young Rock, but it like details about, his life growing up being literally.
I haven't watched it, but I do want to get into it.
It's not bad. Unfortunately, they canceled it. It's not going to be moving forward. But there's three really good seasons that you got to check out. And some of the guys that they get to play, like the guy that plays the Sheik, the guy that plays Macho, even the guy that plays Hogan in it. Like it's all pretty good. But okay. It's not a bad series. I wish they kept it going forward, but I don't know. Maybe another network will pick it up. It's possible. That stuff has happened before, but no, Rock was a good wrestler. He keeps on, like, they kept on bringing him up for WrestleMania. He's going to make a surprise appearance, and they brought him up for the Rumble. He's going to make a surprise appearance, but he always keeps on saying that he's not ring ready. To be in shape is one thing, and he's in phenomenal shape. You can't run those ropes if you haven't been in a ring.
No.
For X amount of months or even years in his case. So I understand that he needs some ring time to come back. I hope he does. I'd love to see him and Roman in a match. But yeah, he was good for what he was. He was good on the mic. He was a showman.
Absolutely.
For my number 7, I went with Jesse the Body Ventura.
Jesus.
And man, does he not look like he used to look today. Like he's like as big as my little finger now.
Yeah, but he's in shape. Like he's ripped up. He's not big and muscular. I saw him, I think it was about a year ago, he was walking somewhere. He had, I'm assuming he was coming, I don't know where it was, but he had a bag with him. I'm assuming he was going to a hotel. He kind of lifted up his shirt. Man, his abs were ripped up. Like he looked in great shape. He's not super huge, but he's pretty ripped up. There's no fat on him, that's for sure.
No, I went with the Body just because growing up, Saturday night's main event, him and McMahon doing the color, doing the broadcast, and like just some of his quips. Jesse was amazing on the mic. I haven't really seen many of his matches. Obviously, he wrestled before our time.
Yeah.
But what I did see of him really reminded me of Superstar Billy Graham. He basically he copied Superstar's look in a sense.
So did Hulk Hogan.
So did Hogan. But yeah, Jesse, I put him at number 7 just because of he was a great mouthpiece. He was the perfect antagonist with Gorilla Monsoon.
And Vince McMahon. He was him and Bobby Heenan and him and Gorilla Monsoon. Or sorry, him and Gorilla Monsoon, him and Vince McMahon always had chemistry together. Jesse could do commentary with anybody, and he was really good. I always loved it especially when him and Monsoon were together. Will you stop?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was watching a YouTube video of Jesse. He was actually at a Comic-Con, and he was, he got talking about the business a little bit. Didn't talk a whole lot about it. And I think I sent you a text message. Man, he does not like Vince McMahon. And for reasons I don't know what, I don't think you'll ever see him make a return to the business, but I think it would be amazing for him to show up and do at least one more broadcast.
Well, the reason him and McMahon have an on again, off again relationship was because Jesse is the only one, and he says it himself, he's the only one that's got his own retirement package. When his contract was up, it was coming up, he went and did Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Arnold was there and said, Jesse, you should come do the Running Man with me too, or something. So he had it put in his contract. he did something with his contract that gave him all the rights to do whatever he wants. So NBC had just re-signed WWF for more Saturday Night's Main Event. And Dick Ebersol loved Jesse Ventura with Vince McMahon. So when Jesse came back and told McMahon that he was going to go back and do Running Man, McMahon said, no, you're not. And Jesse said, yes, I am. I can do whatever I want to do. And if you don't like it, I'll just leave. So he left. Dick Ebersol found out they were getting ready to record the new season of Saturday Night's Main Event, first episode or whatever it was. Now I'm paraphrasing all this. Yep. And they were going to bring Bobby the Brain Heenan in to do a little bit of commentary. And Ebersol got pissed off and said, we want Jesse back. So McMahon had to cave and allow Jesse Ventura to basically do what he wanted. And the reason he doesn't get back, well, for the longest time, if you bought like a DVD set on WrestleMania and Ventura was doing commentary, you'd only hear Gorilla Monsoon. You wouldn't hear Jesse Ventura's voice, because if you heard his voice, they had to pay him royalties.
Really?
Yes. Jesse still gets royalty checks from the WWE, and that's why he doesn't come back very much for appearances for WrestleMania and pay-per-view and stuff, because anything he's on, anything his voice or likeness is in, Vince McMahon has to pay him a royalty.
Wasn't it, and this may have come up before when we've been talking about the old days, wasn't it Jesse that tried to unionize the room?
Yes, and it was Hulk Hogan that ratted him out.
Bastard.
Hulk Hogan made more at WrestleMania 3 than every other wrestler combined. Every other wrestler combined, their paychecks did not equal Hulk Hogan's. Of course, Hulk Hogan wouldn't want a union. That would cut into his money, right? All you have to do, all this shit is on YouTube. Just Google it. Jesse Ventura on Hulk Hogan, or Jesse Ventura Union, and Jesse Ventura Vince McMahon. It'll all come up. And he's not scared to talk about it. My number 6, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay.
6-time WWE champion. He had tag titles. He had intercontinental titles. Won that King of the Ring that really started him. Thank you, Hunter, for being an asshole, getting in trouble and letting Austin move in. And holds the record for the most Royal Rumble wins at 3. Austin and Rock are kind of there together for me because, again, now, Austin wasn't a bad wrestler. He was a pretty accomplished wrestler before Owen dropped him on his head. After that, he kind of just had to change his style because he couldn't do any real high-flying stuff anymore, like he used to do with Stunning Steve and all that stuff. He became more of a brawler, but he was another guy that wasn't a great wrestler, great entertainer. He could rile up a crowd at the drop of a hat, just of a look as Stone Cold Steve Austin. But again, like The Rock, not the greatest technician in the ring. His wrestling skills, dare I say, were kind of limited. He had some punches, he had some kicks, he'd flip you the bird, give you the stunner, maybe a clothesline or two, or hit you with a chair. He was pretty limited. But Hall of Famer, I think, if I'm not wrong, highest grossing merchandise attraction in WWE history. It's got to be, it's got to be ahead of Rock, Hogan, and Cena. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong with that, but he's in the top 3 of all time for sure. Maybe top 2. But at number 6, I took Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Not a bad pick. I mean, you mentioned about his time in WCW as Stunning Steve. That's, to me, that's the Steve Austin that I liked. Him and Pillman as the Hollywood Blondes.
They were incredible.
They had those faces they had a very punchable face.
Do that fucking camera thing.
They had that look about them, but at the same time, man, like they were a good tag team. Him and Pillman.
They were.
And Steve went on to talk about it on I can't remember if it was Broken Skull or if it was another show that I was watching, but he's like, as the Hollywood Blondes, like they were at the top of their division, and then Bischoff was like, yeah, we're splitting you guys up.
They threw them together because they had nothing for them, and then all of a sudden they started getting over, and they weren't supposed to get over. There were other tag teams they were trying to get over. Hollywood
Yeah,
Blondes weren't supposed to get over. And Bischoff and his fucking brain surgery, fucking however Ricky would say it, split them up. And they were doing well. They had those tag titles a while.
they did. They did. And they were one of the best tags at the time. But yeah, I mean, Stone Cold, I mean, when he came in as a ringmaster, and I mean his story about how he ended up becoming Stone Cold, it's well documented. I'm not going to get a whole lot into that. Um, he needed a gimmick change. The ringmaster was just not. It was cool. I mean, you know, Ted DiBiase was his manager and all this kind of stuff, and he was trying to come across as being a real ring technician. And even at that point, like he wasn't on a Mr. Perfect or a Bret Hart ring technician level to me at that
No, he
at
wasn't.
that time.
No.
I mean, he could hit you with a clothesline body slam. You know, the odd time, maybe the odd figure four leg lock. He had the $1 Million Dream, but I mean, in terms of like, you know, snap mares, hip tosses, like the classic wrestling moves, you didn't really see too much out of him, like in terms of that. But yeah, I can see why you'd put him there. So that was your 6. My number 6, Jake the Snake Roberts.
Ooh, there's a good one.
I put him in that place, and it's unfortunate that Jake isn't actually higher. If he had ever won gold at the WWF level, he would have been higher on my list, I think. And it's unfortunate that they never went in that direction with him. I wish that they would have put some kind of a strap on him. Crafty. He could be considered a ring technician, although he was a little bit of a brawler. What always got me with Jake is that you didn't know who you were talking about or who you were talking to. Were you talking to the character, or were you talking to the real Jake Roberts?
They were pretty much two in the same.
At his peak, his character of the Snake and him as a person, they had basically meshed together. And like one of the craftiest guys on the mic. Like his promos were like the stuff of legends.
He could look at you, just give you a look, and make you believe what he was doing and saying was real.
Absolutely.
And you couldn't, like you said, you couldn't tell who you were talking to if you were talking to, I can't remember his first name, his real first name, his last name is Smith, or if you were talking to Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good pick. You know, when I was doing my list, that's honestly one name never crossed my mind.
I don't know, man. Just something about him. He never really raised his voice too much. He was always that calm, you know, that level. The odd time he would raise his voice, but like that was the scary part that I always found growing up. It's like, what's actually going on behind this man's eyes?
Oh, there was a lot of damage done there.
Oh, going into our top 5, my side of the top 5 has changed a few times. I think you could slot any one of these guys into, you know, various spots. Like they're my side of the top 5. I honestly, like, I could literally roll a dice and just pick another number to put these guys in. Before we go any further, I just want to give a little bit of a stick tap and a shout out to the man that we lost just this week, the Iron Sheik. 81 years old, stayed in character right until the very day that he passed away. Every day you could log onto Twitter and the official Iron Sheik account was calling Hogan a jabroni.
Fuck a Hulk Hogan jabroni. I got a 12-inch cock. I fuck your ass with my cock.
I mean, he stayed in character right up until the very end, man. He's done many shows, even at the WWE Hall of Fame. Like, you normally see guys, like, they'll come out of character, you know, whenever they're doing their thanking speech and all this kind of stuff. Cheeky baby, he stayed true to the business and stayed true to the character right up until the end. 81 years young. Wrestling, the world of wrestling lost a good one.
Oh, he was good. All right, number 5. I'm going with HB Shizzle, Shawn Michaels. 3-time WWF champion and 1 World Heavyweight Championship. Again, Intercontinental titles in there. A couple of tag team titles. He had tag team gold in the AWA. But WWF was his bread and butter. And I know he was out 5 years, you know, back injuries, suspensions, demons that he faced. When you look at Shawn Michaels and how long he's been with the company, and he's been Mr. WrestleMania for however long. When you just look at the major titles, 3 WWF titles and 1 World Heavyweight Championship doesn't seem a lot for Mr. WrestleMania, the icon. Yeah. But again, missed 5-6 years, came back, and, you know, had changed. Wasn't the same Shawn Michaels that he was with DX and all that stuff, but in-ring performer, greatest of all time as far as high flying goes. Could wrestle, excellent mat wrestler, excellent high flyer. Had a little bit, his promos were amazing. He could cut a really good promo and didn't care what he said to you. You got to wonder though, like, and again, for like, not that he was small, 6'1", 230 pounds is a good sized man, but at that time in the WWF, he was a minnow and swimming with a school of sharks type thing, and still did okay. But you just got to wonder, like I said, if he hadn't missed those 5-6 years, how many more world championships would he have had? Hell in the Cell with The Undertaker. I remember when we saw that.
Oh my God.
I lost my mind. Like that
match was incredible.
That was awesome. So yeah, rounding out my top 5, starting at 5, Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
It's funny that you brought up that Hell in the Cell because Mick Foley always said if it wasn't for that match happening, his Hell in the Cell match with Undertaker, that would never even have been a pipe dream.
No.
He's like, we need to do something to one-up that. And man, did they ever one-up that.
Yes, they did.
And that was a pretty lofty standard to try and undertake.
Yes.
Pun included. But yeah, no, Shawn was a good mat wrestler, like you said, great high flyer. Again, another very punchable face.
Oh yeah.
I've even as I found even as like a baby face, like you just that grin and that chin just sticking out, like you want to just rattle, like you want to rattle one right off of his jaw. But great promos. I mean, he was he did what the business needed at the time.
Yeah.
No, that's a good pick for mine. And this kind of counters that. I went with the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Okay.
And it was Shawn that ended Ric Flair's career.
Mm-hmm.
16-time heavyweight champion. I mean, you can go across. He actually has a triple crown because he had the Intercontinental title. He won the tag titles. Obviously, he's more so known for his work in the WCW, NWA.
Yeah.
Brief stint in the WWE. I kind of felt his time in the WWE was a little bit forced. It was almost like they didn't really know what to do with him, so let's just let him win the Royal Rumble and we'll put the belt on him and see where it goes.
No, I think that was always... I think once that belt was held up, I mean, everyone wanted to see Hogan Flair. Everyone wanted to see it. It was supposed to happen at WrestleMania 8. And to this day, no one will talk about it, and Gene Okerlund did an interview on it and said, one side didn't want to do business. Now, I'm assuming that it's the world famous, "That doesn't work for me, brother." That's what I'm assuming. So when they put the belt on him at the Royal Rumble, I think it was always going to be that Flair was going to win the championship because it was almost sticking it to the NWA. Right?
Yeah, because he was on the outs with them.
Yes. He was at Jim Herd, wouldn't give Flair his contract. Flair said, "I'm fucking out of here." Got a hold of McMahon. He said, "I got the belt." McMahon said, "Send it to me." Herd said, "I'm sending Doug Dillinger over to get the belt." Flair said, "Well, make sure he's got 25 grand plus interest or the belt's mine. Fuck you." So he sent it over. And then that's when the NWA I don't think, maybe they were switching to WCW at this time, but I'm not sure. That's when they sent a cease and desist letter, and they had to start not showing that championship belt.
That was at the same time that they made that tag belt.
That's right. World's heavyweight champion.
World heavyweight champion. And that was the one that they started blurring out.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. So yeah, number 5, I had the Nature Boy.
Okay. At number 4, I took Randy Savage. 2-time WWF champion, 4-time WCW champion. Another guy had an Intercontinental title. Savage will go down, and again, I'll talk about that WrestleMania 3 match with Steamboat. He made Warrior look like $1 million at WrestleMania 6 in that retirement match. And even Hulk Hogan, even though Savage hated his guts for a very long time, even Hulk Hogan would say, I've never been in the ring with someone who was such a perfectionist as Randy Savage. Everything had to be right down to the T. Steamboat talks about that match for WrestleMania 3, that Savage, like that they had the legal pads, and it was about 8 pages. All right, Steamboat, move number 267. And he knew it. They just had it perfectly set up. Savage would call him at 2 a.m. You weren't sleeping, were you? Hope you were going over that paper. Move number 113. And Steamboat knew it. Perfection, perfection, perfection. Fantastic wrestler. An amazing wrestler. Promos that some of them you understood, some of them you're like, what the fuck did he just say? But it still sounded cool, so it was awesome. The look, he had the look. And that's about all you can say about Randy Savage. He's at my number 4.
Cool. No, that's a good pick. And, you go back to that Steamboat match with him at Mania 3. That, when I was growing up, if I had to pick like an actual wrestling match, that would be the match that I would say at the time was probably the greatest match that I had ever seen.
Yep.
Like had I never seen like Flair and Steamboat, Sting and Steamboat, or Sting and Flair, I mean, like there have been so many great just actual wrestling matches over the years. But at that time, that must have been the greatest match that I had ever seen in my life.
Agreed.
Hands down. My number 4, Hot Rod, Rowdy Roddy Piper. I never saw him as wearing a strap, never saw him wearing a belt, never saw him wearing gold. I knew that he was going to be good at being the ultimate asshole.
Yes.
And I think one of my favorite segments was on Piper's Pit when he smoked Jimmy Snuka in the head with a real coconut.
Yep.
They had a fake one, and then the one that he actually used was a real one.
They had a gimmick one, and he didn't pick it up.
Just an amazing talker, the ultimate antagonist in the ring. Not known for, I mean, he could wrestle. He knew some moves. He could move around the ring. But my favorite move was the eye poke.
Yeah,
he'd look you dead. Boop. My favorite era of Piper, I would say, would be WrestleMania 4 to WrestleMania 8.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I know he took some time off to go to do the Hollywood thing, and They Live is still one of, I mean, it's a John Carpenter movie, so I love it anyway. But the fact that Piper was in it,
it's a cult classic.
The famous line, I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I am all out of bubblegum.
And it is still used to this day.
Absolutely. Hot Rod was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. Hot-headed, yeah, great on the mic. Reminded me a little bit of me as terms of, poking the bear a little bit.
Yeah.
Going up.
I agree.
Hence the reason that I have a Hot Rod t-shirt anyway. But yeah, God rest his soul. Hot Rod coming in for me at number 4.
Okay. The top 3. For my number 3, Bret the Hitman Hart. 5-time WWF champion. 2-time WCW champion. Matt Wrestling. It's just completely, when you think of mat wrestling, you think of Bret Hart, technician in
Yep.
that ring, excellence of execution, Gorilla Monsoon, hands down, technical wrestling. Wasn't the flashiest guy in the world. Didn't go out and say or do like a whole lot. Always loved his dramatic pauses, looking at people and talking about Shawn Michaels, the boy toy. You know, interview skills were, I mean, later in his WWF career, in his last couple of years, he'd give you a wicked promo. Earlier,
Yep.
he wasn't the greatest talker in the world, wasn't the flashiest wrestler, but he had that snap and he had that technique that I absolutely fucking loved. And that's why Bret Hart is my number 3.
You talk about that technique. If you go back and you look at guys that came out of Stampede, Brett had that move. Dynamite Kid had that. Chris Benoit, who trained with Stampede for a brief time, he had that. There's so many wrestlers that actually had that way about them in the ring.
Yep. Okay, so you said you didn't do your number 3 yet.
No, number 3 for me, I came in with the Stinger. Not the Crow Sting. I don't really recognize that as being, the Sting that I grew up with. Definitely the bleach blonde hair, the Stinger with the Stinger splash, the Scorpion Deathlock. Him and Flair, man, they've had some matches that would just stand the test of time.
Yep, absolutely. Like the night they went against
Sting
WrestleMania.
Yeah. Just a great in-ring athlete. He was good on the mic, could cut a promo. He took care of guys in the ring. That's
Very
one thing that
much
I always noticed that about Sting. Like he wasn't one to be sloppy in the ring. It was like if you're watching a match and it's like, oh shit, like that just went, something just went wrong. Sting would go out of his way to make sure that you were taken care of. And there's not too many guys in the business that would do that.
He was more sloppy and clumsy when it came to himself. Like if he was going to do a move,
Yeah.
I noticed that more than once. Like he'd hurt himself a couple of times.
Yeah.
I saw him hurt himself, but he was always very careful with you. Even when I still remember every time he would military press Ric Flair, knowing Flair had a broken back, even though it was years before, when he was bringing Flair down, it's hard to, that mat made a big boom. But he put Flair down softly. Like you could almost see him guide Ric Flair down starting from the shoulder. He always took care of guys.
Yeah. So Sting came in at number 3 for me. He seemed like a good guy in the locker room. Like guys liked working with him. Like you could tell that there weren't too many receipts that he ever actually received.
I don't think I've ever heard a wrestler say anything bad about Sting.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2. I flip-flopped with this for an hour, and I think I've got it down, and I'll explain when I get to my number 1, why I took him number 1. At number 2, I'm going with Hulk Hogan. Now, 6-time WCW champion, 6-time WWF champion, won the Royal Rumble a couple of times. The only reason I'm putting Hogan at 2 was because when we were growing up, he was fucking everywhere. He literally changed the grounds of professional wrestling. He started showing wrestlers what a true superstar was supposed to look like, how a true superstar was supposed to be treated, and how a true superstar was supposed to be paid. One of the biggest politicians, he'll go down as the biggest politician in wrestling history. That's how he hung on to his spot for so long. But another guy could give you a wicked promo, could electrify a crowd with just the raise of an eye. Not a great wrestler, just a big, strong dude. I mean, there's not much you can say about him. I mean, even if 100 years from now they crack open a time capsule and they say, what's wrestling? Oh, that's that thing Hulk Hogan did. Even if you were never a wrestling fan, you know the name Hulk Hogan. And he's at my number 2.
See, I I mean, you got to put him up there, love him or hate him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not many people that actually loved him in the later stages of his career. Growing up, I mean, everybody, it was like, the minute, like, we're watching Superstars on Saturday morning and Hulk Hogan's music comes on, it's like everybody just crowds around the TV.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what's the Hulkster going to do? Like, who is he fighting? Is it Typhoon? Is it Kamala? Is it King Kong Bundy? And him and Bundy had quite a few matches over the course of his career. I think I would, and I would have to probably go to the NWO version of Hogan, where it's like he's trying to sell himself as the heel, and he was a heel in AWA.
Yes. He was a heel when he first started in the WWF as well, with Vince McMahon Sr.
Yeah. I like the direction that they went in with him in WCW. I think the red and yellow, I think that had run its course.
Oh, it was gone. It was gone.
The training, the say your prayers, eat your vitamins, believe in yourself, and whatever else that he added to the mantra. They needed to do something else with him, and I think turning him heel with Hall and Nash to form the NWO, that just sent him up. Like,
and he couldn't lose, and that's why people got so pissed off, because he'd never lose the belt because he had the NWO. What's going on right now with Roman Reigns? Exactly. But now the band is starting to. There's a few holes in the boat. So, but this could all be a rouge too, right? Like, I mean, who knows? But it's kind of the same thing as what they're doing with Roman. But I agree with you. Hogan was also good. And again, this goes back to being a good politician, because he had Bischoff in his back pocket. Once Bischoff explained to him about the NWO, Hogan knew that was going to be a cash cow. Yep. And what's funny is they were 3 months into this NWO gimmick. Hogan's contract was coming up. Vince McMahon actually reached out to him.
Oh.
They sat down. Bischoff dropped Hogan off at the hotel to have a beer with Vince McMahon and talk about a contract.
I did not know this.
So, I mean, McMahon said to him, he said, listen, Terry, he said, if it'll get you more money, I'll make you an offer. He said, but we'd love to have you here. But the money Hogan was asking was just too much. It was, and Bret's contract was up as well. This was in, the early 90s. So it was, do you keep Bret or do you go after Hogan? But there's also a possibility that you might lose them both. So they put all their eggs in their basket with Bret. And Hogan went on, and basically that's why Hogan got the contract that he got, was because McMahon said, I'll write you a qualifying offer. And if it doesn't follow, if it falls through at WCW, if they don't want to match it or give you more, hey, I'll honor it. Come on back.
Right.
But that's, not too many people know that.
I did not know that. So that was your number two. Number two for me, and you've already talked about him, Bret the Hitman Hart. Not so much for his tag career. I mean, him and the Anvil, they had a pretty good run. Couple times of wearing tag gold. I think it was, looking back on it, I always kind of got the feeling like, well, Bret didn't necessarily need the Anvil. As a tag team, they were great. But I don't really think, like, if Bret entered into the business and was never a tag partner, if he never needed a tag partner, I think he still would have flew to the level that he ended up achieving.
Yeah.
Loved his angle on Canada versus the States. And I always loved that when he was talking about, like, if you could ever put a flush handle on the United States, if it was a toilet, it would be Florida. Not bagging on Florida. I just love that.
If you'd ever give the United States of an enema, you'd stick the hose in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I think one of my best Hitman rants, they were either taking down the cage. It was a house show, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I remember that.
Vince gets in the ring and he's like, obviously you're a little bit upset about this. And he, like, grabs the mic and shoves Vince to the mat. Upset isn't the word. You screwed me. Everybody else has screwed me.
This is bullshit.
And they told him, go off. We'll just bleep everything out. And they forgot to bleep it.
Yeah, they forgot to bleep it.
Brett gets to the back and they're like, what the hell were you doing? He's like, you guys told me to do that.
You told me to do it.
No, I mean, you've already discussed him. You've already talked about him as your number 4, your number 3. I mean, the excellence of execution, possibly the best ring technician that I've ever seen. Could do a little bit of high flying stuff. He was also a submission guy, although he doesn't really, like when they booked him in Austin and at SummerSlam. I think it was SummerSlam, in the submission match. He's like, it shouldn't have been a submission match. I mean, he could do anything. Brett could work with anybody.
Yeah, he could.
You talked a couple episodes previous about how, certain guys can make other guys look really good. And Brett was one of those guys. He could work with anybody in the ring and make them look like $1 million. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else that I can really say that hasn't already been said. You fucking hit the nail on the head with everything that you had said about the Hitman. I wish that he would make some more appearances nowadays with WWE. Apparently, there was some talk that they were going to try and get him to come in to be a little bit part of creative, but it wasn't just going to be on one show that he'd have to fly in for certain.
Oh, I don't think you'd ever see him do that at this age.
I'd still like to see him make a couple of appearances. Definitely up there in terms of my top 3. Yeah, I mean, what else can you say? He was the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
All right, now number 1, and again I flip-flopped with 1 and 2. It's Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Okay.
8-time NWA heavyweight champion, 6-time WCW heavyweight champion, 2-time WWF heavyweight champion. Not counting tag titles, not counting U.S. titles, not counting intercontinental titles, not counting Southern State titles. Like, the man's probably had 100 championships in his 50-year career, or however long he wrestled. One in the 80s with Jim Crockett Promotions, and in Mid-Atlantic, probably one of the best promo guys around. Wrestling-wise, great wrestler, great entertainer, could piss off a crowd, the drop of a dime. As his career, you're going into Nitro and all this stuff, where he really, like, he started dancing around the ring and hitting the ropes and dropping an elbow on the mat and taking his pants off. That kind of, that kind of, like, I don't know where or why the fuck that started. I always just liked the, like, show up in a suit and represent, like you're the horsemen are the symbol of excellence, and now you belong locked in a fucking nut house. Like, but I mean, aside from that, still entertained, amazing promo, great wrestler, more championships than anybody else in the history in the business. Like I said, I flip-flopped him and Hogan number 1. I originally had Hogan at number 1 because of what he did for wrestling, putting it on the map and bringing in the real paydays for the boys. But at the same time, he had Vince McMahon. Ric Flair was wrestling for Ted Turner's wrestling organization and was still on top of the world. Like, and for a guy, like, they had TBS, the Superstation. Vince McMahon had all of America. They had the pay-per-view markets cornered. So Hogan had a big push, not near as big as Ric Flair. So, and then you add on all those world championships on top of that, and Flair could wrestle. Flair could go an hour. Hogan could never do that.
Oh my God.
And that is why, and it's just those little things that that's why I put Flair at number 1.
Man, how many hour-long matches did Flair have with Steamboat? How many hour-long matches did he have with Sting?
Barry Windham, Lex, like not
the
Lex
list
Luger,
goes on and on.
But there's a lot of guys he went an hour with. Like, and that's not counting television. That's house shows too.
Yeah.
Like, the man never got sick. He never got injured. Like, never. And he just went. Yeah. Flair number 1.
That's a good pick. And I mean, I kind of feel like a dickbag now that I had him at number 5, but I mean, you hit every point on that could be hit. Like, I mean, he went everywhere. He wrestled everybody.
Literally all over the world.
Like, if you want to look at that new world heavyweight title that Seth Rollins is wearing right now, Triple H was like, this belt is going to represent a champion that is going to fight anybody, anywhere.
That's right.
Ric Flair did that.
Ric Flair did that. That's right.
Flair did that. If it was in New Japan, if it was in fucking East Berlin, if it was in, I don't know, if they could have booked him into Tignish PEI,
Yep.
he would have went there and did it.
Yep.
You know, Flair has been what this business has basically grown from. So that's an amazing pick for number one. My number one, I went with the Phenom, the Undertaker.
Undertaker.
Starting out as Mean Mark, he ended up having a few different roles. He was Big Red.
Big Red. Holy fuck. What a
like
terrible persona.
Go back to the days, man, and when his contract came up, and Ole, who was booking, I think for WCW or NWA at the time, and he's like, "Well, I'd like to make a little bit more," and Ole's like, "Mark, nobody's going to pay to watch you wrestle." And then you look at the career that he had for the last 30 years.
Yep.
He came in at Survivor Series 1991 and portraying the dead man, and okay, like nobody could beat him. You know, he did have a few losses in there, but look at his WrestleMania streak. And I mean, the championships, the matches that he's had, casket matches, you know, the heat that he's had with so many guys. But, you know, great promos. His in-ring persona. When he first came in, I remember watching Survivor Series, and I'm just like, that dude has bigger circles under his eyes than I do. We weren't very
old there during that Survivor Series either.
No. I'm like, you know, this dude has more baggage under his eyes than Air Canada on a flight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and just his in-ring persona. Like, he could be a high flyer. I've never seen anybody walk the top rope like that and be as acrobatic in the ring, even leading up to his final days. Like, he was still doing that kind of stuff, that signature Undertaker stuff.
A guy 6'10" and 320 pounds shouldn't be able to come off one side of the ring, jump over the top rope on the other side, and fly through the air. There are guys 6 feet tall, 190 pounds can't do that.
No. You know, it just, his body work that he's done in the ring. And I mean, you can count the titles that he's held. I mean, I think he's held every, in terms of the heavyweight, he had the Winged Eagle, he had the Big Eagle, the Big Scratch, he had the Undisputed,
the World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship. I mean, he's had all of those titles on countless times.
Yeah.
And again, another guy that took care of people in the ring.
You know, it's funny too. Like, I understand what Shawn Michaels, like the way Michaels always upped his game when it came to a WrestleMania match, and they started calling him Mr. WrestleMania. But you look at the streak the Undertaker had at WrestleMania. Shouldn't he be called Mr. WrestleMania? Like,
I'd say, but no. The fact that Ole basically told him, Mark, nobody's ever going to pay to watch you wrestle. And then he ends up getting to WWE. And it was actually Paul Lee that got him the interview.
I've heard
with
that
McMahon.
Story. The ripped pants.
The ripped pants. And his ass is hanging out. But, you know, and he's just sitting at home, and he's, you know, the phone rings. This is before caller ID, and he picks it up. He's like, hello? McMahon was like, yes, is this the Undertaker? And Mark was like, yes, sir, it is. And
I'm not Eggman. I am the Undertaker.
Not Eggman.
Now
he was so scared, man, that okay, they're going to have me debuting at the Survivor Series. Oh God, am I going to be coming out of that egg? Am I going to have to shave my head? They're going to put me in a big round egg thing. I'm going to be the Eggman.
I got to hold my stomach. I just had surgery, folks, for anyone that's listening. I can still see him giving that interview. Oh God, I'm going to be Eggman. Now, I'm looking at that. Now, for anybody that's listening, and again, they've heard our lists and they're thinking, well, Why was he there, or who's not there? Let's make some obvious names, and I'll just go on my list. Who's not on my list? Number one, Andre the Giant is not on my list. Now, by the time I had just started getting into watch wrestling, it was around WrestleMania 2, just before WrestleMania 2. Andre was still an attraction at this point. He wasn't on television every Saturday. Actually, he was never on television on Saturdays. I never really got to watch Andre until WrestleMania 3. And by the time I got to watch Andre, his health was already gone. His career was on the south end.
Yeah.
Didn't do... I mean, he pushed Hogan a little further with the WrestleMania 3, and then that night in Minneapolis on the main event when he took the title and give it to DiBiase and set up WrestleMania 4 for the tournament and all that stuff. But Andre never really did much, like, as a performer when I was growing up. And again, this was based on our generation, right? So that's why Andre wasn't on my list. John Cena is not on my list because he may be tied with Ric Flair for World Heavyweight Championships. Ric Flair has done this over 40 or 50 years. John Cena has 16 world championships over 20 fucking years.
Yeah.
Big difference. Huge difference.
And I'll point out the difference too. And like they were talking, who was it? I was watching a YouTube thing too, just the other day, and they were talking about Cena and oh God, about how he's right there and that they should bring him back to win one more to have him surpass Ric Flair and Randy Orton. And, Orton has had the title X amount of times. Like, they won those titles at the time that the belt was basically changing hands almost every every second or third week.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you got 16-time heavyweight champion. Flair did this for, like you said, 30, 40 years. Like, that, like, the belt was changing hands every second or third week. Like, it doesn't, like... I don't know. To me, it doesn't hold any water. But yeah, you were going on a tangent there. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh no, that's fine. And there's one other name that didn't make my list that you had number one, The Undertaker. Now, I was going to put him up around. He would have been a closer to the top of the top 10. But I was looking at my list and I was like, well, I don't want to take out Steamboat because Steamboat was a wrestler. I was always a wrestler guy. I always liked the technicians. I could have replaced him with Dusty Rhodes.
Yep. But
Dusty Rhodes had the charisma. And he's the son of a plumber, baby. I just couldn't take him out. And I was looking, I'm like, I really can't. I mean, he had a great career. Great WrestleMania streak. And does he deserve to be in the top 10? Absolutely he does. And he's probably in a lot of people's top 10. But I couldn't find somewhere. I mean, there's no ties. You can't put, I put this guy and this guy in it. It's pick 'em or lose 'em.
Yep.
And again, great wrestler, Hall of Famer, obviously. There's never going to be another Undertaker. There's never, ever going to be another streak like that. Same as there's never going to be another Hulk Hogan. There's never going to be a John Cena. There's never going to be another Andre the Giant. There's never going to be another Macho Man Randy Savage. And again, it goes back to people are going to be like, what the fuck? You put him there? Or why didn't you put him in there? And this is the great thing. And this is, again, why at the end, I'm going to put a request out for anybody that listens. Send an email. Let me know what your top 10 is. It's just cool to debate. It's always cool to debate.
Absolutely. When I was compiling this list, and I'm trying to think of like my top 10 from the mid 80s when we first started getting into it, and when we were watching it in the heat of the Monday Night Wars in the 90s and stuff like that. One name came up, and I'm like, can I actually put him in my top 10? And that was Warrior. I'm like, I always go back to what Hogan said when they went at it at the Sky Dome. I think that was Mania 6.
Yeah.
5 minutes in, Hogan's got him in a chin lock or something, or a headlock or something like that. And Warrior's like, let's go home, because he was blown up.
Yeah.
Because he expended all of his energy coming to the ring. And he's like, let's go home. And Hogan's like, brother, we've got 67,000 people that are watching us here. We're 5 minutes into this match. Or we're going to sell this a little bit longer. And like he was so much about himself. He was so self-absorbed. I'm like, yeah, he was big, he was muscular, he took on, guys that were of equal stature, him and Hercules.
And you don't want to talk ill of the dead, but I mean, it's every wrestler. Well, not every wrestler. 80 to 90% of the wrestlers that talk about the Ultimate Warrior say the same thing. So it's like, not everyone is lying. And let's face it, he wasn't in the business that long. No. He really, really wasn't. He came in 87, 88, and he was in and out until 95. And then he went to WCW for 6 months. And then that was it.
Yeah.
Not a long career.
Yeah. That's the reason that he didn't make my top 10. Just when you look at all of the aspects, like I've touched on a few guys that would take care of people in the ring. Warrior was not one of them. I didn't include Goldberg because I thought that the streak was inflated.
Oh, it was. Of course it was.
Like Kevin Nash has touched on this on his podcast, where it's like, 1 week he's 123-0, and then the next week he's like 160-0. Okay, when did those other matches happen? I mean, he came across as a nut bar in the ring. You didn't really know how you're going to tackle this walking muscle.
It was another attraction.
Another attraction, basically. Not a wrestler.
No.
Brett has gone. He's been very vocal about his in-ring ability to take care of guys. I don't need to go into too deep of analysis on that. But yeah, like that match that ended Brett's career. He's like, Bill, don't hurt me. Before they went out, he's like, don't hurt me, and he ends up blasting him in the face with a kick that ends up ultimately costing Brett his career. Now Bill has come back. He's spoken back about that like, I didn't. If I wanted to hurt Brett, I really could have. Dude, you did. Like, you did. But those were two that came to mind when you're talking about like some of the greatest title reigns, if you want to look at it like that. But those are two that I thought about adding them onto my list, and I'm like, personally, I don't see them being within the top 10.
That's going to do it, guys, for another episode of the Figure Four Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Doug. Listen, that was our top 10. Let us know what your top 10 is, or was, or whatever. Different generations, right? Let's talk about it. Drop us a line at thefigurefourpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, my name is Doug. Thanks for tuning in. I'm out.